Hey everybody, and welcome to another RCT2 review stream. Today we are going to look at a couple of contest entries. So this contest is New Elements Grand Tour 2020. So this kind of harkens back to the RCT2.com days of the road rallies, where there'd be a certain area around the world as the theme, and then certain other kind of rules to follow. So this is round one. Round one was Cuba. So the requirements beyond a theme to Cuba was that you had to have an in-house coaster, like a homemade in-park built ride, and then also a water attraction. So that took the form of a lot of different things, and we ended up having 12 entries for this first go-around, and all really good. I think there's really something nice to say about every single one of them. The overall quality was very high. So we're going to jump in. We're going to do this stream over two parts. So today I'm going to be looking at number 12 all the way up through to number 6. And then we will come back maybe tomorrow or the next day and do the top 5. So without further ado, let's get into it. So this is number 12. This is Carnival Cubano by Gustav Goblin. And the premise here is that we have an old ferry terminal here, or like cruise ship terminal, that has now been reused and stripped bare, and but there's a theme park on top of it. So here's our little in-house coaster here. This is Estrella Fugaz, and it's a nice little miler looking type kids coaster, and it's cute. You know, it doesn't do a whole heck of a lot, but I kind of like the idea of it. It's got a nice little bunch of right-hand turns, and smooth enough. And I like that the supports are kind of on this like mobile space frame, so it kind of looks like it might have, you know, come from somewhere else, traveled around, or done some things like that. So kind of neat there. A nice little Cuban flag here on top. A couple other notables here with the Ferris wheel here, taken from my tutorials. So those are linked in my other videos here if you need to take a look at that if you're interested in doing it as well. So nice little Ferris wheel here, and then a little 2x2 car ride. Here's our water ride. These are little bumper boats down here, actually out in the ocean, which I think is kind of a neat idea. And then kind of working around these existing, well, theoretically, what were existing buildings on this pier that were kind of reused into these like game stalls and things like that. I like this kind of striation here with the blue and white, and then the tower in the middle with the big flashy star and everything. So cute little park. I mean, there's not a whole lot to it, but it's cute. I think it's nice enough. I like the checkerboard pattern for each of the various queue lines. It kind of has a little bit of a scenario feel to it, which I think is kind of cool. And then over here we have the carousel. So this is the plaza carousel here within this nice little plaza. Architecture-wise, it's not bad. You know, it's a little under-detailed, I think, but there's a lot of nice buildings in here. Definitely has that Cuban vibe with all these kind of open arcades on the streets here. Little details like the air conditioning units on the various parts and pieces here. Up top here we've got a water slide going down to this pool, rooftop pool, and then we've got a little hot tub and other stuff here. And then there's just lots of little details, little kind of trash and things like that scattered about. Here's a car. And then just having the peeps kind of wander the streets and everything too, I do appreciate. I think there's a lot to look at here, you know, beyond just the park. Nice little church here, and then these kind of nice brightly colored buildings, and varied enough. Like the heights are varied, and you have the diagonal bit here and there. I mean, like I said, it's under detail, I suppose, but the thing is, it's all a good base. So like, this could easily be taken and kind of amped up into even more here. I think the challenge that we run into when the competition kind of asks for an in-house coaster, while this does fit the bill, I think you're generally looking for something maybe a little bit more grand, or kind of a park that's a little more grand scale of the whole thing. But you know, not too bad, and I think it's certainly an entry to be proud of in the end. So congratulations to Gustav Goblin for his entry here. As we move along to the next one, so this is just Cuba by VegasCoaster. So this one here adds a little bit of terrain variation, kind of from what we had seen before. And we have a couple of different things. But let's take a look at the coaster here. So the coaster is called Destructor de Bloqueo. which again I'm probably pronouncing wrong, but who knows. So it's got some kind of fun stuff here. So we've got you know, your car ride going along, and you know, just shooting through the trees and everything here. And then right in the middle here, we get to this section here where we're gonna blow through the American flag right there through this little bobsled element, and then back onto the track here. So definitely homemade, definitely in-house, kind of oddball little thing there. So definitely interesting for sure. Our water ride's over here with the river rapids. So you got that kind of coming down through this little waterfall section and then going back into this building here. It's awfully small, but has some of this nice little rock work and stuff like that. You know, architecture-wise, I think it's pretty simple. I think you had a little bit more variation and detail in Gustav's entry prior, but we do have the moving vehicles, which is always a nice touch. A couple little like maze pieces here, and then just like crops on the side. We do have another carousel here also, and this almost bell tower looking building here with the launch tower in it. I think on the whole it's maybe a little bit sparse, but not too bad. Definitely has some bits and pieces to enjoy in it, and it has those bright colors that you'd expect. I think it may be a little variation on the roof type, the roof color also would help, but you know, not too bad overall. But let's let us move along to number 10. This is Cub-a, Cube-A by Jaguar, and this is the clever entry. As you can see, it is a Cuba, haha, jokes. So you know, it's different, and I points for creativity, I suppose. We have our coaster up here, which is Hyper Cuba, which you don't see a whole lot of impulse coasters done in this game these days. So it's got this nice little continuous circuit thing there. We have our requisite water ride down here with the Cuban cigar boat. So we have our little cigar box here and going around and a couple of different spots. There's a bunch of just other little details. I mean, obviously your giant Cuban flag square, pirate ship down here, and then some of this like older architecture and stuff here as it kind of fragments into whatever this fever dream theme is. I do laugh at in-house ride as the crooked house, the house itself. So clever idea, but definitely one of those kind of entries that feels sort of like a last-minute ditch to just turn in something. So, you know, points for cleverness, maybe not points for execution, but certainly interestingly done. All right, so next up is Dreamland Havana, 1951. This is by Colby. And actually, I really liked this park. I thought this was really clever. So, a lot of parks in, you know, the early days had this sort of Dreamland feel to it. So this is sort of patterned after Coney Island's Dreamland, which was a 1920s thing. And Cuba actually did develop a couple of small parks that had this sort of American type aesthetic to it. And you know, I think this is a really well done ride or park. So let's take a look at the big coaster here. So this is Cyclone. So you can see the nice kind of simple design to it, but not a bad layout overall. That feels like an older style wooden coaster. We've got these Wild Mouse custom supports here. Not too bad. Not quite my pick, but I don't mind that. But a nice looking layout overall, I would say. And then in the center here, our centerpiece is the water splash ride. Actually a double on either side, and then the central tower, which really does have that Dreamland feel to it. This is kind of straight out of what Dreamland was at Coney Island. So pretty neat to see that with the bridge across and the water splash up underneath. Really a neat looking ride, and kind of a nice iconic piece here. Over on this side, we have the Tickler, which was a common name for these Virginia Reel type coasters, which are sort of the precursor to the Wild Mouse. So these little spinning tubs that went all the way down. Really like this. It's very well done. Oop, nicely themed, and just looks really great. Loving this little face here on the facade of the Crooked House building here. So this is the Fun House. Really cool, really well done. And then just all these other rides and stuff. So here we have another one of the Ferris wheels, like my tutorial. Nice entrance here with the two towers and the arch coming across, and then over here this Traver airships ride. And, you know, kind of throughout the entire thing, it's all rides and attractions that were, you know, that would have been around in 1951 when this ride, or when this park is theoretically built. So we have bumper cars, there's a tilt-a-whirl over here. There's an old school whip ride, which is done with scenery. I would like to see that done as like a shoestring ride, perhaps, and you can do it, but it might look a little bit nicer. But I do really appreciate here, there's these two rides here. First of all, this airships ride, so this is over the sea. Lovely little airship here outside, unfortunately kind of blocked by this tree, but that's really neat. And then on this side we have another, the haunted house, which you can kind of get a little bit of the facade look there. Maybe not as kind of fearsome of a house that you might expect it to be for a haunted house, but still pretty nice. Architecture-wise, the whole park is good. You really have this great an aesthetic from Dreamland. So the entrance here, this great-looking dance hall type building over here, and then all the game stalls, the tower, this pergola on the whole thing, and just all of the architecture is really kind of solid overall. In the town, not bad throughout the whole thing. Maybe a little similar across the board, but not too bad. I mean, it certainly looks like has that Cuba feel. I think it would have been a benefit to activate that space just a little bit. Maybe have some of these cars that were sitting there move. Maybe throw some peeps back and forth on some of these areas, or just put some, you know, kind of grunge throughout the space, like you know, signs and things on the sidewalk for cafes or tables, things like that. I do really like the swimming pool at the front with the Cuban flag underneath of it, and then you activating it with the guests here. So 2 stories of sunning guests and everything like that, and then also the tram lane, or the various trams that we're going through here. So this is the Havana Electric Railway, kind of coming along through the space. I think that's pretty nicely done. I actually really like this kind of central walk space. It would have been great to see this actually using invisible paths so that you could have the peeps on it. I think that would have been a really big bonus for that area. But, you know, overall, I really liked this park. I think maybe the surroundings let this one down just a little bit, but I really did enjoy this park, and I think it was done very well. With a lot of attention to detail and kind of attention to the history of everything also. So, congratulations to Colby. I think this is very well done. Alrighty, let's move along. That's 4 down. We have 3 more. So this is number 8 on the list. So this is Cuba Libre Gardens. And this was Coaster-Geoff and Scoop who built this one. Let's zoom out and take a look here. We have a nice little town here along the water's edge, and then also this pretty lush mountainside with the rocks and all the landscaping. So actually, I think in my opinion, with this one, the landscaping was about the best part of this map. So we have these great rocks, and then just this really heavy landscaping kind of mixed in. I think was really it was nicely done, and it didn't feel too repetitive, didn't feel too forced. I think these rocks are really hard to do because they're really easy to overuse. And, you know, I think you could say some of the stuff down here maybe is a little bit overused, but up actually in kind of the mountains, I really think it's quite nice and incredibly well done. So the park itself has a B&M for some reason called Chango. It's a pretty big ride for a small little park here, but, you know, no matter. We have our demon feel to this from Tivoli Gardens with this kind of initial little helix down into the start. So let's take a ride along and watch our little helix drop down here. And we'll curve around and have our full drop down into the loop, using the terrain pretty nicely here. Bridge over top of that station and go through a dive loop up underneath of the log flume, down and around into this great tunnel. Pretty big drop right there. Over and around the pathway, through this corkscrew, this kind of out banked corner, and then into the brakes. Brake run maybe a little bit short if you're going realistic, but not too bad overall. I think was pretty well done. Now the in-house coaster is right here. So this is a scenic railway Montaña Rusa, Russian Mountain, which is the name for roller coaster in most places. So nice little scenic railway here, almost hidden a little bit. I kind of would have liked to have seen maybe a little bit more visual activation of this kind of thing, or like the artificial rock work and things like that around, but still pretty nicely done. It's nice and compact and feels kind of appropriate for the space. It's using Space K's scenic railway cars on there too, which I appreciate. Those are nicely done. A couple other little rides in the park, also pretty good. You get your carousel, your Ferris wheel, this Chance Chaos, and then a nice little horror one here. So there's a tunnel of horror. Has a pretty good little layout here, and I always like to see an additional track ride in the park. The log flume here being the water ride. Check that box. I actually really like this water ride as far as the way that it interacts with the B&M coaster on the left, kind of how it pops out of the mountainside and goes up with this covered lift hill and all the structure I do enjoy quite a bit. And then kind of how it drops off the edge here over top of this little water basin. So I think this was very well done. This is maybe the best thing in the park, in my opinion. Over here, too, we have a little shoestring swing ride also. Actually kind of reminiscent of the Dreamland entry we just looked at with these two towers and then a little arch on the side. I think that's nicely done also. Pretty good facade here, pretty detailed. And it definitely looks good. Maybe the path could be activated a little bit more, but this little central icon crosswalk thing here is super cool, and then as is this little sculpture there and the kind of big gate into the park itself. Down here on the beach, there's a lot to see. The different like boats pulled up. Here's a couple of little kiosks, and then just lots of those sorts of details all around that we're seeing on these kind of beach parks. So I think that's a nice add to the overall detail, and just looks pretty good overall for the whole thing. I think in the end, it's a really solid park. Like I said earlier, I think the landscaping is kind of the biggest strength in the back here. It's a little strange in that the park almost seems kind of hidden in behind the facade here or all these facades of all the buildings. It almost seems like it would be more activated out here. But I can't fault the layout too much because it's sort of squeezed in the back there. But it does feel maybe like it's a little bit disconnected from the beach itself. But this is a cool tower thing here as it wraps around. So I do like those, little bits and pieces there. So this is a strong entry, and I think with this one and Colby's entry too, we're really, already starting to get into those that I would say are on the stronger end, have a really good theme to them, and you can tell the execution was pretty strong. Let's move on to the next one, which is Puerto Havana by Fred. This one has kind of a funny backstory as far as the README goes. So this is the in-house coaster, which looks like a B&M until you look a little closer and you see intimate-looking track and corkscrew track and limb track. So the idea is that this local city council wanted to build a coaster in-house, or wanted to build a coaster but couldn't afford any large coaster from any manufacturer. So the engineers went out and bought various pieces of track from old coasters until they had enough track to piece together into a full layout here. So funny, kind of implausible, but still an amusing storyline for what is actually a kind of a pretty neat looking ride. Sort of amalgamation of all the different stuff, which I think is kind of cool. So we're using the limb trains on this one. Well, limb train, only one. But let's speed this up just a little bit so we can enjoy the layout on this as we go along. So here we go up the lift hill. Kind of cool to see the supports go down into the buildings. It's noted in the README that a couple of the buildings had to be raised for this coaster to be built, but that was a sacrifice the town was willing to take. So a little bit of tongue-in-cheek at the communism there. But cool diving drop here into this loop that goes around the turn into the mid-course. Really like this dive loop over top of the fort, back underneath to the 0G roll. All very B&M here at the beginning. And then we kind of wrap up to this mid-course breaks. And then we get a fair twisty second half with interlocking corkscrews. You can kind of see how it's wrapped around some of these other buildings here. On the whole, the layout is very much B&M, I think, inspired, but you know, I do like the story. I think it's kind of fun. It would be neat if the various parts and pieces emulated those types of rides more, perhaps. I think that might have made it look a little awkward, but I honestly think awkward might have been better. Kind of the more awkward it looks, perhaps the better or more convincing the story becomes. But I do like the area around it. This, you know, normally this kind of path type I'd call perhaps a little bit ugly, but I think it works here. And, you know, the various kind of brown specks and the trash kind of scattered around, it definitely has that sort of grungy, sort of rundown feel, but it's not too bad overall. I do like the moving traffic here, a little bit slow, but not too bad. This little pixel arche on the wall. And architecture-wise is pretty strong, I would say. Maybe a little bit too much variation, perhaps, as far as, you know, like a common facade goes. You have Cuba really has a lot of those long arcades of archways all the way down through a bunch of buildings in a row. So maybe there's a little bit of variation here that could be simplified up just a bit, but not too bad overall, I would say. I think that is done very well. And then the station itself here is quite nice. I do like this fountain especially. Also this trench as well. And, you know, down here we have our requisite water ride. The Puerto Havana cruise tour. Not a whole lot to this one, since it just kind of goes around the area. You can kind of turn on the... No, you can't because it's invisible. I was going to say you could take a look at the where it goes, but not too bad. But there's not a whole lot to see overall, and it seems like almost a little bit of an afterthought, but not bad. We have a couple of decent-looking boats here, including this larger ship here, the Santa Clara old pirate vessel. So that's pretty neat. And then all these little shops and everything are nice little details and touches. So well done overall. I think this is a good entry. It's got some nice little detail to it. And a clever storyline. I think it's funny, you know, no matter how questionably realistic it is. I think it's a funny idea and is a neat entry. And honestly, the layout is a strong layout in its own right. I think it is a good looking layout and it works around the existing space really, really well. Let's take one more look up here at this tower or the fort here before we move along. Definitely a nice little detail there also. So anyway, congratulations to Fred. I think this is a pretty cool one. So let us move along, and now we reach the top half. So today we have one more, and we're going to look at Porque Santiago, and this is by Mamarillas. And this one is really nice, and I like it because of how understated it is. We don't have any of the typical Cuba plaza and everything else. This kind of almost feels like it's in more rural Cuba, and I'm a big fan of that, to be honest. Let's jump right in as far as the ride goes. So the coaster here is excellent. So this is a reverser coaster that kind of a neat idea. First of all, you don't see reverser coasters terribly often. I mean, in real life, you haven't seen them since the 1920s, but it's kind of a neat little idea here, and feels like something that you might see as kind of a homemade deal. Got your little frozen mechanic here who's ready to flip the switches for the various parts and pieces. So we have these like backwards and forward sections, which I do like. I mean, it all feels very homemade. You look at the little metal supports here in different colors and things like that. So there's a lot to appreciate with this, I think, and I can really appreciate it. I think it's very cool. I like over here we have the log flume, which definitely feels like a Carnival type log flume. It's honestly the same layout as the portable log flumes. So a pretty cool design there. Over here we have this like little shuttle thing that goes back and forth in a couple of spots here, so you can kind of see it curve back and or roll back and forth, so almost like a butterfly coaster. But another very kind of homemade design. Same with this slide. The other side here, and we have our our carousel, our slide, our Ferris wheel, little frog hopper on this side, and then a cable car up above everything. Just lots of nice little details. I think are very, very strongly done through this whole thing. But really, to me, what shines on this one is all the other stuff. So we have our little electric railway coming through here. So this is the tram coming through here, which has a nice little stop on the side. But architecture-wise, this is great. You have this great little church with the graveyard behind it. All this pretty lush, thick foliage. Buildings on the other side, you have your little water catches on the roofs like you see in a lot of the Caribbean areas. And then just all of these little bits through here, all these little kind of rundown buildings. The exposed power cables that are hanging down sort of in some disrepair. A lot of these docks are in disrepair, sort of falling apart, but there are still a lot of little boats throughout scattered in this area. Nice little bridge here with a little crenellation on either side. And just a lot of cool little abandoned and kind of broken down details throughout. This is kind of the first entry to me where it's getting into a lot of these little micro details like that, and I think it certainly elevates it for me, and looks really nice. I'm not a huge fan of the what I think are the Wacky World Time Twister cars. Those don't really work for me. The texture is a little bit much and the size is maybe a little bit large, but you know, that's, I think, one criticism among a lot of praises. I think there's a lot of cool stuff here. I mean, the coaster thing is definitely unorthodox, but you can't fault it. I think it's really nicely done. So there's definitely a lot to see there, and I think it was very, very well done for the entry, and you know, so far I think is the best that we've seen. But next stream we will jump into the top 5, and there's a lot of really cool stuff to see there. So stick around, and we will get to that one also. Let me know your thoughts in the comments for these, and get ready for those other 5. Like I said, those should come maybe tomorrow or the following day, and we're actually not too far away from the deadline for round 2 for this contest, which is Namibia. If you'd like to enter future contests after Namibia, there's a round 3, and I think there's 5 rounds in total. So jump on over to New Element, and you can join the site or the Discord, and take a look at flexing your own skills here and entering the next one. But hopefully you enjoyed this review, and until next time, thank you very much for watching. Have a good day.